Good day everyone. I'm Ivan, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is Terminating Toxicity, Strategies for Leaders to Confidently Deal with Toxic Behaviors. I want to introduce our presenter for today, Beverly Byerman King. Beverly Byerman King specializes in working with people and organizations who want to control their reactions to stress, build resiliency against life's challenges, and live healthy, successful lives using her SOS principle. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Beverly.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Ava. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on dealing with toxic and difficult people. And so we're going to talk about workplaces and what that looks like and how we put all of this together. So the first question is, what comes to mind when you think of a toxic workplace? What image comes to mind? What do you think of when you think of the toxicity or a toxic workplace? It might be negativity, it might be absenteeism, it might be gossiping. So we're going to look at what does it mean to act rather than react. So I want you to think about a workplace where there is conflict without the negativity, where there's collaboration without the backstabbing, where there is problem solving without the gotchas or the drama. It's like a puzzle. Every single piece is important to the functioning of the overall team. So we're going to talk about how do we act rather than react. We struggle as leaders for a number of reasons, and we struggle because often we just don't have time to deal with people issues. And I think often leaders struggle because they don't get to the root cause of why the negativity, why the toxicity is occurring in the first place. So we're going to look at, talk about the different signs. So what do you think of? What would a couple of signs be of a toxic workplace? A lot of turnover, no trust within the organization or within the team, turnover, presenteeism, unhappy employees. The first part is around communication. We often see the us versus them mentality. It might be poor leadership, where people are unmotivated, where they're feeling undervalued, disrespected. They don't have the sense of trust. There's a lack of growth where people feel like they're stagnant, where they can't go any further. High turnover was a big one that you had mentioned. Absenteeism, presenteeism, showing up late, where people are complaining that they don't have balance because they don't have energy at the end of the day to even take care of themselves. Everything is all consuming. They're feeling burnt out. They're tired out. They're worn out. What do we know? We know that toxic employees breed toxic workplaces, and toxic workplaces breed toxic employees. But just because something's unpleasant doesn't necessarily mean that it's toxic. Now, if you are repeatedly being left out and criticized, or you and your team are, or ignored, then it may be considered a toxic workplace. I love this definition of toxic: harsh, malicious, harmful. And it could be because of the attitude of the people around them, like their colleagues or their supervisors, or it's the company culture itself that could be contributing to it. So like I said earlier, toxic workplaces breed toxic employees, and toxic employees absolutely breed toxic workplaces. What are some of the challenges that we see in our workplaces right now? What is the leadership role when it comes to dealing with toxic workplaces? And how do we quickly address, coach, and counsel to move those forward, to deal with them effectively? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the challenges of managing negative and difficult people, toxic environments? Think about this a little bit. What are some of the behaviors that cause an unhealthy work environment? All right, let's talk about some of these behaviors. The first one, when somebody is entitled, when people have different core values, the us versus them mentality. When people are selfish, self-centered, when people are passive-aggressive, somebody who is attention-seeking. Some people are just not the right fit. Do we have the right people in the right job? 87% of people indicated that workplace incivility had an impact on their performance. Moving forward, 2022, 3, 4, we're really looking at right now, the year of workplace culture. I'm going to say even 25 and 26 are going to be focused in on workplace culture. We know that culture is 10 times more powerful than more money. So, the number one reason for people resigning was a toxic company culture. Next to low salary, poor management, our values are the guiding principles. They're the most important thing about the way that we do our job, how we show up. Everything that we say and everything that we do negatively or positively impacts culture. What I'm seeing right now is a focus in on civility. When we talk about civility, it's that focus in on how we get along, how we treat each other. It's about courtesy. It is about respect and inclusion. It's about the respect for the rights of other people. But what we know is that the very best leaders get highly attentive in those situations. The all or nothing thinking, controlling our reactions to this. The difficulty behind negative attitudes and behaviors is that they are highly toxic. And so you may be functioning just fine. So here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. When we work in groups, we literally catch each other's emotions just like a virus. That's the phenomenon, I can't say that word, phenomenon called the emotional contagion. We're continually spreading our mood and we're being influenced by other people's moods. Your employees, your team members are taking notice of your emotions as a leader. We're going to talk a little bit about how do you address some of this toxicity. We're seeing this layer upon layer of unpredictability in our organizations. It's a lot harder to stay positive, to keep things in perspective, to communicate effectively, to work collaboratively. So again, the question is, what does your workplace environment convey? Is it comfortable, peaceful, engaging? Is it supportive, respectful, authentic? Or is it full of these unrealistic demands, lack of control, low reward, lack of appreciation? Top 6 contributors to burnout. Think about these for your organization. Are there unsustainable workloads? Is high effort plus low reward equals high stress? The next issue I would talk about would be communication. How are we communicating? So how do we move this forward? How do we quickly address to improve the situation? It says difficult people use difficult and negative behavior because they're able to get what they want by being that way. Often people who rub against your top values are the ones who trigger you the most. So how do you have this conversation? How do you use these strategies to deal with these issues? So the first one says you need to, prepare ahead of time. But we start it by listening. We want to give feedback. Outline your expectations. Give really clear instructions. And we want to focus in on behavior. And then we want to move it to problem solving. They may not even recognize that it was a problem in the first place. Now the last step, the follow through. Document it. Talk to your HR. Follow your processes. But it's also about making sure that you take care of yourself. It's absolutely critical. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of energy to deal with that toxicity on top of all of the other things that we need to do. In all of my presentations, I use an acronym or a principle called SOS. SOS stands for situation, ourself, and support. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to take care of yourself? Who's there to support you? So how do we act rather than react? Going back and identifying what are some of the challenges that you're having right now in your organization, to that self-care being a priority. What would you write down as a start, stop, and continue? What are some of the reactions people are having to the things that are going on? And how is that impacting the culture, the way the team gets along? And then what are some of the policies and procedures that you have in place for addressing that toxicity so that you know what the rules of engagement are? Thank you. Dealing with people who are negative and difficult, it is tough. This is not an easy fix. Generally, we let it go on far too long. And so I would really encourage you to think about how do we act rather than react? And how are we holding those values to help us hire and fire and promote people in the organization so that we're creating the culture that we desire.
Thank you, Beverly. That concludes the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now. You have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.